The sun hung low over the jagged peaks of the Rocky Mountains, casting long shadows across the winding asphalt of Highway 40 just outside Denver. It was a crisp autumn afternoon in late October, the kind where the air carried the sharp scent of pine needles and distant wood smoke from suburban chimneys. Traffic hummed steadily, commuters in their SUVs heading home from the city, delivery trucks rumbling toward the foothills, and the occasional hiker's pickup kicking up gravel on the shoulder. Amid the rush, no one noticed the small, frantic shadow darting between the guardrails, its tawny fur blending with the dry grasses that poked through the cracked pavement. Ilara Jenkins was 16, with a mop of curly brown hair tied back in a loose ponytail and a backpack slung over one shoulder. She lived in a modest ranch-style house on the edge of Golden, Colorado, where the sprawl of the city met the wilder edges of the Front Range. School had let out early that day for a teacher conference, and Ilara had decided to walk the 2 miles home along the highway's bike path instead of waiting for the bus. Her sneakers crunched against the loose stones as she scrolled through her phone, earbuds blasting an indie folk playlist. The path paralleled the road, separated by a chain-link fence that was more symbolic than secure, riddled with gaps where animals sometimes slipped through. She paused to adjust her laces when a strange noise cut through her music, a high-pitched mewl, almost like a distressed kitten, but deeper, wilder. Ilara pulled out one earbud, frowning. The sound came again, from the direction of the underbrush near the fence. Curiosity tugged at her. She'd grown up hearing stories from her dad about the local wildlife. Coyotes, deer, even the rare mountain lion sighting. But lynx? Those were elusive, more myth than reality around here, usually confined to the higher elevations or the occasional escapee from the Denver Zoo's sanctuary programs. Pushing through a tangle of scrub oak, Ilara spotted it. A tiny lynx kitten, no bigger than a house cat, its large tufted ears flattened against its skull as it huddled against a rusted culvert. The cub's fur was dappled with spots, still soft from youth, and its wide golden eyes locked onto her with a mix of fear and desperation. It couldn't have been more than a few months old, weighing maybe 10 pounds, but it moved with the awkward grace of something not meant for this concrete jungle. A thin collar of faded green nylon circled its neck. Zoo property, no doubt. How it had gotten here was anyone's guess. Perhaps it had slipped its enclosure during a transport or chewed through a weak fence in the night. Before the story goes deeper, make sure to subscribe for more narratives like this. Ilara's heart clenched. She'd volunteered at the local animal shelter last summer, bottle-feeding orphaned raccoons and nursing injured birds. But this was different, raw, urgent. The cub let out another plaintive cry, inching closer before freezing, its body trembling. Traffic roared past on the highway, just 50 yards away, and Ilara realized with a jolt that the kitten must have wandered from the nearby wildlife rehab center up the road. Reports had circulated in the Golden Gazette about a recent break-in at the facility. Vandals, they said, but no one mentioned escaped animals. Whatever the cause, this little one was in peril. One wrong dash across the road, and it would be over in an instant. Kneeling slowly, Ilara extended her hand, palm up, murmuring soft reassurances. "Hey, buddy, it's okay. You're safe now." The cub sniffed the air, its whiskers twitching, but it didn't bolt. Progress. She glanced around. The bike path was empty, but voices carried from a group of joggers in the distance. She needed help. Someone with experience, not just a kid like her. Fishing her phone from her pocket, she snapped a quick photo, then dialed the rehab center's emergency line she'd memorized from her volunteer days. Front Range Wildlife Sanctuary. A harried voice answered on the third ring. It was Maria Torres, the head tech whom Ilara knew from her shifts. "Maria, it's Ilara Jenkins. I'm on the highway path near mile marker 12. There's a baby lynx here, collared, looks like one of yours. It's scared right by the road." A pause, then urgency flooded Maria's tone. "Lynx. We've been searching since dawn. One escaped during last night's storm. The fence gave way in the wind. Stay put. Don't approach too close. I'm calling animal control and dispatching a team. 10 minutes. Ilara hung up, her pulse racing. The cub mewed again, this time edging toward her sneakers. She held still, watching as it nuzzled the toe of her shoe, its rough tongue flicking out tentatively. Up close, she could see the dirt matted in its fur, a small cut on its paw from thorns or glass. The highway's noise swelled. A semi-truck blasted its horn, startling the kitten into a crouch. It darted sideways, toward the fence gap that opened onto the road. "No, wait!" Ilara whispered, lunging gently to block its path. Her backpack tumbled into the dirt, spilling notebooks and a half-eaten granola bar. The cub froze, ears perking at the commotion, then bolted the other way, deeper into the scrub, but perilously close to where the path dipped toward a drainage ditch that funneled right under the highway. She scrambled after it, thorns snagging her jeans, heart pounding. The ditch was shallow but steep, choked with autumn leaves and discarded fast food wrappers. The Lynx kitten tumbled down the embankment, landing with a soft thud and a yowl of protest. Ilara slid after it, landing on her knees in the mud. The cub was wedged against a root, panting, its eyes wide with exhaustion. She reached out, scooping it up in one fluid motion before it could struggle free. It was lighter than she expected, warm and quivering against her chest. "Got you," she breathed, cradling it like she would a frightened puppy. The collar's tag read, "Lyriel, do not handle without gloves," but desperation overrode caution. From her backpack, she pulled a spare hoodie, faded blue, emblazoned with her high school's logo, and wrapped the cub snugly, muffling its cries. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder. Animal control probably, or Maria's team. As she climbed back up the embankment, a patrol car pulled onto the shoulder, lights flashing. Officer Dan Hargrove stepped out, a burly man in his 40s with a neatly trimmed mustache and the no-nonsense air of someone who'd seen too many roadkill rescues. He'd grown up in these parts, hunting with his dad in the backcountry, and knew the stakes when wildlife crossed human paths. "Miss, step back from the road," he called, spotting Ilara with the bundled form in her arms. "You the one who called it in?" "Yeah," Ilara said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline. "It's a lynx cub. Escaped, I think. I couldn't let it run into traffic." Hargrove nodded approvingly, radioing for backup as he approached. The cub shifted in her arms, a soft growl escaping, but it didn't fight. Maria's van screeched up moments later, tires crunching gravel. The tech hopped out, gloves already on, her face etched with relief and worry. "Ilara, you're a lifesaver," Maria said, taking the bundle carefully. "This one's from our breeding program. Lyriel's her name. Her mother rejected her at birth. We've been hand-raising her. If she'd hit that road." Ilara wiped mud from her hands, watching as Maria checked the cub over in the van's crate. The sun dipped lower, painting the mountains in hues of orange and purple. But as the team secured the scene, Ilara's mind raced. How had the fence failed? And why did the cub seem so determined to head toward the city, away from the sanctuary? Little did she know, this rescue was just the beginning of unraveling a deeper mystery, one that would pull her into a web of negligence, hidden motives, and the fragile line between civilization and the wild. The evening chill settled over the highway like a blanket, the kind that seeped through denim jackets and made you wish for gloves. Ilara stood on the shoulder, watching as Maria Torres gently coaxed Lyriel into the portable crate, the lynx cub's muffled protests fading into soft whimpers. Officer Hargrove finished his report, scribbling notes on a clipboard under the glow of his cruiser's headlights. The traffic had slowed to a rubbernecking crawl, drivers craning their necks for a glimpse of the drama, but the pros handled it efficiently. Cones set up. A tow truck called for any potential hazards. "You did good, kid," Hargrove said, tipping his hat as he handed Ilara a business card. "We'll need a full statement tomorrow at the station. Sanctuary's got the animal secure now." His voice carried the gravelly timbre of a Coloradan born and bred, the type who'd fished the South Platte his whole life and knew the mountain's moods better than most. Ilara nodded, pocketing the card, but her mind was elsewhere. The cut on Lyriel's paw had looked fresh, jagged, not from thorns but something sharper, like wire or metal. And the collar, though tagged, was frayed at the edges, as if it had been gnawed or pulled too hard. She replayed the moment in the ditch. The cub's frantic eyes, not just scared, but searching, like it was running from something specific. The Gazette article from last week flickered in her memory. Vandalism at the sanctuary. Tools stolen. Fences checked but not reinforced. Coincidence? Maybe. But Alara's gut, honed from years of piecing together puzzles in her environmental science class, whispered otherwise. Maria emerged from the van, peeling off her gloves. She was in her mid-30s, with dark hair pulled into a practical bun and calluses from years of field work. Originally from a small town near the Mexican border, she'd moved to Colorado for the wildlife programs, drawn by the vast open spaces that reminded her of home but teemed with creatures she'd only read about. "Alara, come here," she said, waving her over. "You want to see her settled. She's calming down already. Your hoodie helped." Inside the van, the air smelled of antiseptic and hay, the crate secured in the back with straps. Lyra peered out through the bars, her tufted ears twitching at the new voices. Alara leaned in, careful not to startle her. "Hey girl, you're okay now." The cub tilted her head, a low rumble in her throat that was more curiosity than threat. Maria sighed, rubbing her temples. "We lost track of her around 2 a.m. Storm hit hard, winds up to 60 miles an hour. The east fence buckled, but we patched it by sunrise. Thought she was still on the property, hiding in the brush. If you hadn't found her." She trailed off, shaking her head. "The program's tight on funding. Breeding lynxes is expensive. We're one of the few facilities trying to bolster the population. Losing her would have been a setback." Alara frowned, glancing at the darkening foothills. "What about the break-in? The paper said vandals cut the wire. Could that be connected?" Maria's expression tightened, just for a second, before she busied herself with a clipboard of her own. "Police investigated. Kids. Probably. High schoolers messing around. No leads, but we've upped security, cameras, extra patrols." She forced a smile. "Thanks to you, though, crisis averted. Want a ride home? It's getting late." The offer was tempting. The walk felt longer in the twilight, shadows lengthening across the path, but Alara hesitated. "Actually, can I stick around a bit? See if there's anything else I can do?" Hargrove overheard, chuckling as he packed up. "Ambitious one, huh? All right, but stay out of the way." He climbed into his cruiser, the lights flicking off as he pulled away, leaving the scene to the sanctuary team. As Maria drove Alara back to the facility, a low-slung building nestled among ponderosa pines just off the highway, the conversation turned lighter. They talked about Alara's volunteer stint, how she'd named a rescued owl Whiskers after its funny feathers, and Maria shared stories of hand-feeding bobcat kits with eyedroppers. But beneath the chatter, tension simmered. The sanctuary's parking lot was lit by floodlights, revealing a chain-link perimeter that looked sturdy from afar but bore fresh welds in spots, glinting like scars. Inside, the air was warmer, humming with the low buzz of fluorescent lights and distant animal calls. The main enclosure housed a pair of adult lynxes, Lyra's potential parents, sleek and watchful, pacing their habitat. Alara helped Maria transfer the cub to a quarantine room, a soft padded space with heating lamps and shallow pans of water. Lyra explored tentatively, batting at a toy mouse before curling up in the corner, exhaustion winning out. "You're a natural," Maria said, washing her hands at the sink. "Ever think about interning here full-time? We could use someone with your instincts." Alara's cheeks flushed. It sounded perfect, better than the mall job her mom kept pushing. "Yeah, maybe, but that fence, mind if I take a look?" Maria paused, then nodded. "Sure, but it's dark out. Flashlight." They stepped outside, the night air crisp with the scent of damp earth from the earlier storm. The east fence ran along a service road, bordered by a thicket of junipers. Alara shone the beam over the repairs. Heavy-gauge wire, bolted tight, but as she walked the length, her light caught something off, a section where the ground was disturbed. Dirt mounded like a shallow grave, and a glint of metal half buried. Kneeling, she brushed away leaves, revealing a pair of bolt cutters, rusted but recent, the rubber grips still intact. "These aren't ours," Maria whispered, her voice sharp. "We don't use these models. Too bulky for the aviaries." Alara's pulse quickened. The vandal's tools, left behind or planted. She snapped a photo with her phone, the flash stark against the night. We should call Hargrove back. Before Maria could respond, a rustle came from the trees, subtle, like footsteps on pine needles. Both women froze, the beam swinging wildly. A figure emerged from the shadows, a man in his late 20s, hoodie pulled low, hands shoved in his pockets. He was local, Ilara realized, tall, with the lanky build of someone who'd grown up hiking these trails. "Everything all right?" he called, his voice casual but edged with something unreadable. "Saw the lights from the road. I'm Jake Harlan. I live up the ridge, help out with trail maintenance sometimes." Maria relaxed slightly, recognizing him. "Jake? Yeah, just securing the perimeter. Had an escape earlier." He nodded, eyes flicking to the fence, then to Ilara's phone. "Lynx, right? Heard the chatter on the scanner. Good thing you got her back." But his gaze lingered on the bolt cutters, a flicker of unease crossing his face before he turned away. "Well, night, ladies. Stay safe." As he vanished into the dark, Ilara exchanged a look with Maria. Who was he, really? A concerned neighbor? Or someone with ties to the break-in? The mystery deepened, pulling Ilara further from her ordinary afternoon walk into a tangle of suspicion and secrets. Little did she know, Jake's appearance was no accident, and Lirael's escape might hide a deliberate hand, one that threatened more than just one lost cub. The next morning dawned clear and brittle. The kind of Colorado autumn day where frost etched patterns on car windshields and the breath hung in visible puffs. Ilara woke to the smell of coffee brewing downstairs, her mom already up and humming along to the radio in the kitchen. Their house on the outskirts of Golden was a cozy split level, cluttered with hiking gear and framed photos of family backpacking trips, reminders of simpler times before Ilara's curiosity started pulling her into the wilder unknowns. She rubbed sleep from her eyes, the events of the night replaying like a half-remembered dream. Lirael's trembling form, the glint of those bolt cutters, Jake Harlan's shadowed face emerging from the trees. Slipping into jeans and a flannel shirt, Ilara grabbed her phone and headed down. Her mom, Lisa Jenkins, a part-time nurse with laugh lines etched deep from years of shift work, slid a mug across the counter. "Heard you had quite the adventure yesterday. Maria called, said you saved the day. Proud of you, kiddo." Ilara managed a smile, stirring sugar into her coffee. It was nothing, just happened to be there. But inside, questions churned. She texted Maria late last night after getting home, asking about Jake. The reply had been brief. Local volunteer, helps with fencing, seems solid. Not reassuring enough. And the bolt cutters? Maria had bagged them for Hargrove, but no updates yet. School dragged that day. The fluorescent halls of Golden High buzzing with midterm prep and gossip about the weekend's football game. Ilara sat through biology, doodling lynx ears in her notebook, her mind miles away on the sanctuary. At lunch, she showed the photo of the tools to her best friend, Tyler Reyes, a lanky sophomore with a passion for birdwatching and a skeptical streak honed from his dad's journalism days. They huddled at their usual table in the cafeteria, the air thick with the scent of overcooked pizza and teenage chatter. "Sketchy," Tyler said, zooming in on the image. "Those grips look newish. If it's vandals, why leave evidence? And that guy, Jake, Google him later." Tyler's family had roots in the area, his grandparents running a small diner off I-70, so he knew the local undercurrents. Developers eyeing sanctuary land for condos, budget cuts hitting conservation hard. By the time the final bell rang, Ilara was itching to act. She biked to the Front Range Wildlife Sanctuary, the 2-mile pedal along the highway, winding past strip malls and boulder-strewn lots. The facility's sign creaked in the breeze, a wooden carving of a soaring eagle that her dad had helped build years ago before his job transfer to Denver. Maria was in the office, sorting intake forms amid stacks of vet reports and donation pleas. The room smelled of printer ink and chamomile tea, a small fan whirring against the chill. "Ilara, perfect timing," Maria said, waving her in. Her eyes were shadowed from a sleepless night, but her energy was undimmed. "Hargrove stopped by this morning. Those cutters? Stolen from a hardware store in Lakewood last month. Matches the break-in pattern. Tools vanishing from sites around here. Alara's stomach twisted. So not just kids. Someone's targeting places like this. Maria nodded, leaning against her desk, cluttered with mug stains and sticky notes. Could be.
We've had fences tested before, hunters poaching, or activists with grudges against captive breeding. But lynxes, they're protected. No black market for cubs like this. She glanced toward the quarantine window where Lyriel dozed under a heat lamp, her paw bandaged neatly. The cub looked smaller in the light of day, vulnerable, her spots fading into the soft gray blanket. A knock interrupted them. Jake Harlan, right on cue, carrying a toolbox and coils of wire. He wore work boots caked in red dirt and a faded Broncos cap, his smile easy but his posture stiff. "Morning, Maria. Heard about the east fence. Thought I'd reinforce it before the next storm rolls in." His eyes met Alara's, holding a beat too long. "You again? The hero from last night." Alara forced a neutral nod, memories of his unease by the cutters flashing back. "Yeah, just checking on Lyriel." Up close, Jake had the weathered look of someone who'd spent summers on fire crews, his forearms scarred from brambles or worse. He was from Evergreen, Maria explained as he headed out. Lost his construction gig last year when the economy dipped, now piecing together odd jobs, including sanctuary maintenance. As Jake worked outside, hammering stakes into the soft earth, Alara and Maria checked on Lyriel. The cub perked up at their approach, batting playfully at Maria's gloved fingers through the mesh. "She's a fighter," Maria said softly, her voice catching. "Reminds me of my sister's cat back home, always getting into scrapes." Maria rarely talked family. Alara knew she'd immigrated young, chasing dreams of veterinary school that morphed into wildlife rescue when scholarships fell short. But the peace shattered mid-afternoon. Tyler showed up on his bike, breathless, waving his phone. "Found something. That Jake guy? His truck was spotted on a trail cam near another break-in, up at the Elk Preserve last spring. Not arrested, but flagged." He dug through online forums, piecing together whispers of land disputes. Jake's family farm bordering sanctuary property, sold off years ago to developers, leaving him bitter. Alara's resolve hardened. "We tell Hargrove." But as they stepped outside to confront the growing doubt, a sharp crack echoed from the fence line, wire snapping under tension. Jake cursed, dropping his pliers as a section buckled, not from age, but sabotage. Fresh cuts hidden beneath the welds, timed to fail. He straightened, wiping sweat from his brow, his expression unreadable. Wind must have weakened it. "I'll fix it double time." But Alara caught the flicker in his eyes. Defiance or fear. Maria radioed Hargrove immediately, the office filling with the crackle of static. As the officer's ETA ticked down, Tyler pulled Alara aside near the aviaries, where hawks wheeled overhead in their enclosures. "This isn't random," he whispered, the wind carrying the rustle of aspen leaves, sanctuaries pushing back against a highway expansion, more lanes, cutting through habitat. Jake's uncle's on the county board, pro-development. What if the escapes are meant to discredit them? Show the place can't handle the animals? Alara's mind reeled, the pieces slotting into a darker picture. Lyriel's desperate run toward the city, the frayed collar, perhaps tampered with to ensure escape. The cub's cries from the previous day echoed in her ears, a plea not just for safety, but from a threat woven into the very fabric of the place meant to protect her. Hargrove arrived with questions, his cruiser blocking the gate, but Jake was already packing up, claiming a family emergency. As the sun arced toward the peaks, casting the sanctuary in golden light, Alara felt the weight of it all. This wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was an unraveling, threads of greed and grudge pulling at the edges of her world. Lyriel watched from her enclosure, oblivious, her golden eyes reflecting the fading day. But Alara knew the real danger lingered in the shadows, waiting for the next move in a game far bigger than one lost cub. The afternoon sun slanted through the sanctuary's chain-link gates, turning the gravel lot into a patchwork of light and shadow. Officer Hargrove's cruiser idled at the entrance, its engine a low rumble that set Alara's teeth on edge. She stood with Tyler near the aviaries,
the sharp cries of a red-tailed hawk punctuating the tension like accusations. Jake Harlan slung his toolbox into the bed of his battered Ford pickup, the tailgate clanging shut with finality. His face was a mask of practiced nonchalance, but Alara caught the way his jaw tightened when Hargrove approached, notepad in hand. "Mr. Harlan, mind if I ask a few questions?" Hargrove's voice was even, the kind that brooked no evasion, honed from years of diffusing bar fights in mountain towns. He was built like a linebacker gone to seed, his uniform straining at the shoulders. But his eyes missed nothing, the fresh wire snips on the ground, the uneven welds glinting accusingly. Jake leaned against his truck, arms crossed. "Sure, officer. Just doing my part. Fencing's my trade. That section must have been compromised from the storm. I'll redo it gratis." His tone was folksy, laced with the drawl of someone who'd grown up trading stories at the Evergreen feed store. But Alara saw the flicker, a glance toward the tree line, as if calculating an escape route. Maria hovered nearby, her phone clutched like a lifeline, relaying details to the sanctuary's director over speaker. "Yes, the cuts were deliberate, hidden under the patches. We need a full sweep." Her voice cracked slightly, the exhaustion of the past day etching deeper lines around her eyes. She'd poured her life into this place, scraping by on grants and bake sales, believing in second chances for creatures like Lyriel. The thought of sabotage, for what, land grabs or petty revenge, gnawed at her like a persistent ache. Tyler nudged Alara's elbow, whispering, "Watch his hands. He's fidgeting with his keys." Sure enough, Jake's fingers drummed the fob, a subtle tick that screamed nerves. Tyler had a knack for this, piecing together human puzzles the way he spotted warblers in thickets. Patient, observant. His own family history fueled it. His dad had covered a corruption scandal at the county level years back, exposing kickbacks on public lands. If it's development pressure, Jake's the perfect inside man, knows the weak spots. Hargrove jotted notes, his pen scratching audibly. "You've worked here off and on for 6 months, right? Any issues with the staff? Or visitors acting strange?" He kept it casual, but the subtext hung heavy. "Are you involved?" Jake shrugged, his Broncos cap casting a shadow over his eyes. "Nah, everyone's solid. Maria's a saint. Look, I got a sick aunt in Conifer. Gotta run. Call if you need more." He climbed into the truck, engine roaring to life, and pulled out with a spray of gravel that stung Alara's shins. Hargrove watched him go, then turned to the group. "Kid's got a point about the storm, but those cuts are fresh. I'll pull his records, check alibis for the break-ins. In the meantime, lock it down. No solo walks, cameras on 24/7. He clapped Maria on the shoulder, a gesture more paternal than professional. "Hang in there. We'll sort this." As Hargrove drove off, the sanctuary fell into a hushed rhythm. Maria led Alara and Tyler inside, the door's bell jingling like a warning. The quarantine room was a sanctuary within a sanctuary, soft lights, woven mats, and the faint hum of a humidifier mimicking misty forests. Lyriel stirred in her enclosure, stretching with a yawn that revealed tiny, needle-sharp teeth. The bandage on her paw was clean, but she limped slightly, favoring it as she paced the perimeter, her golden eyes locking onto Alara with an intensity that felt almost knowing. "She's stressed," Maria murmured, unlocking the outer gate. "Lynxes bond quick if you handle them right. Want to help with her meds?" She gloved up, mixing a sedative-laced treat into a dish of ground venison. Alara nodded, slipping on a pear provided, her hands trembling just a bit. Kneeling, she slid the dish through the slot, watching as Lyriel sniffed, then devoured it with delicate precision. The cub's rough tongue cleaned the bowl, and for a moment, she pressed her forehead against the mesh, a low purr vibrating through. Alara's throat tightened. She's so small. Why would anyone hurt her like this? The words escaped unbidden, heavy with the injustice of it. The wild heart of Colorado, squeezed by highways and subdivisions, now betrayed from within. She'd always felt the pull of the land, hiking with her dad to spots where elk grazed at dawn. But this was personal. Lyriel's escape wasn't just bad luck. It was a symptom of something rotting at the edges. Tyler peered in, his usual sarcasm softened. Reminds me of that fox kit we found last year. Scared but scrappy. If we prove sabotage, maybe we can rally support. Petition the county. Get funding for better security. He was already typing on his phone, drafting an email to the local paper. Action suited him. It was how he coped with the world's messiness, turning doubt into momentum. Maria straightened, peeling off her gloves. You two are a force, but be careful. Jake's not the type to back down easy. His family's been feuding over that ridge since the 90s. Sold the land cheap, now resents the sanctuary for wasting it on cats and birds. She paused, her gaze distant, as if recalling her own losses, leaving family behind in Mexico for this uncertain path, only to fight for scraps here. I'll talk to the director about an intern spot for you, Alara. Official cover to poke around. The offer warmed Alara, a thread of purpose amid the chill. But as they stepped out to help secure the aviaries, a call shattered the calm, Maria's phone buzzing with an unknown number. She answered, her face paling. What? Another escape? At the north enclosure? Panic rippled through the air. They raced to the far side of the property, where the deer pens backed onto dense woods. A young mule deer buck paced frantically, its antlers scraping the fence, while a gap yawned in the wire. Neatly sliced, fresh as the lynx's sabotage. No animal missing yet. But the implication was clear. This was escalation, a message that no barrier was safe. Alara's heart hammered as she scanned the underbrush, thorns catching her sleeves. Tyler found footprints in the soft soil, boot prints, size 11, matching the work boots Jake had worn. This is it, he said, voice low. He's testing them, or warning. Maria radioed for backup, her hands shaking as she zipped the sight. The sun dipped lower, painting the peaks in fiery streaks, but the warmth couldn't touch the growing dread. Alara thought of Lirel, safe for now, but how many others? The sanctuary wasn't just a haven, it was a front line in a quiet war over Colorado's soul, wild versus paved, preservation versus progress. And in the crosshairs stood a girl who'd stumbled into the fight, her ordinary life fracturing under the weight of secrets yet to surface. As dusk crept in, Hargrove returned with a forensics kit, dusting for prints under portable lights that buzzed like angry hornets. Alara lingered, helping string temporary barriers, her mind racing ahead. Jake's truck had vanished toward the ridge, but she knew the trails like her own backyard. Hidden paths her dad had shown her, winding through aspen groves to old homesteads. Tomorrow, she'd follow them, with Tyler's help. The cub's mew from earlier echoed in her ears, a call to arms. This mystery wouldn't end with a rescue. It demanded reckoning, and Alara was ready to chase the shadows until the truth broke free. The first light of dawn filtered through the blinds of Alara's bedroom, painting stripes across her rumpled comforter. She hadn't slept much, her mind tangled in the events of the previous day like barbed wire. The sanctuary's breached fences, Jake's evasive gaze, the boot prints in the mud. They all swirled in a storm of unanswered questions. Downstairs, the clatter of breakfast dishes pulled her from bed. Her mom was at the stove, flipping pancakes, the sizzle mingling with the aroma of maple syrup and fresh coffee. Lisa Jenkins glanced up as Alara entered, her nurse's scrubs already on for an early shift. You look like you wrestled a bear, Lisa said, sliding a plate across the table. Maria texted me. Said you're interning starting today. That's great, but promise me you'll stay safe. This sounds bigger than kittens and fences. Alara poked at her food, the pancakes tasting like cardboard. I will, Mom. It's just helping out. But the lie sat heavy. She and Tyler had planned to skip the official tour and head straight for the ridge trails at first light. Her backpack was packed with water, a multi-tool from her dad's kit, and her phone charged for any evidence snaps. The weight of Lyrael's trusting eyes from the enclosure fueled her. That cub deserved better than being a pawn in someone's grudge. By 7 a.m., Alara met Tyler at the trailhead off Highway 40, where the pavement gave way to a dirt pullout marked by a weathered Forest Service sign. The air was sharp, laced with the earthy tang of pine sap and distant wood smoke from cabins up the slope. Tyler arrived on foot, his bike locked at home to avoid noise, a notebook tucked under his arm. He was in hiking boots and a fleece pullover, his dark hair tousled from the wind. "Ready for some recon?" he asked, his breath fogging in the chill. Tyler's enthusiasm masked a deeper worry. He'd lost a cousin to a hiking accident years back, making him cautious about risks in the backcountry. They started up the Ridge Trail, a narrow path that switchbacked through stands of lodgepole pine, the ground carpeted in needles that muffled their steps. Golden's morning traffic hummed below, a reminder of the world pressing in. Ilara led, her sneakers gripping the rocky incline, while Tyler scanned for tracks. "Jake's place is half a mile east, Old Harlan Homestead. If he's involved, there might be signs, cut wire rolls, or tools matching the prints." The trail crested a false summit, opening to a meadow dotted with wild asters, their purple blooms defiant against the frost. From here, the sanctuary sprawled below like a fragile outpost, its enclosures glinting in the sun. Ilara paused, heart aching at the sight. She'd always seen these mountains as eternal, but the scars were everywhere, clear cuts from logging decades ago, now reclaiming with scrub, and the ever-encroaching ribbon of highway carving deeper into the foothills. A snap of twigs ahead yanked her from reverie. They ducked behind a boulder cluster, peering out. Jake's truck was parked crookedly on a spur road, half hidden by junipers. He was there unloading what looked like fencing supplies, but his movements were hurried, furtive. He glanced over his shoulder before prying at a rusted shed door, the creak echoing like a confession. "Think he's stashing something?" Tyler whispered, his voice taut. Ilara nodded, pulse thundering. They crept closer, using the underbrush for cover, the scent of damp moss filling their nostrils. Jake pulled out a duffel bag, unzipping it to reveal coils of wire cutters and gloves, identical to the ones from the break-in, rubber grips worn but distinctive. Ilara's stomach dropped. Proof. But before she could snap a photo, Jake froze, head snapping toward their position. "Who's there?" he barked, voice rough with suspicion. He grabbed a crowbar from the truck bed, advancing slowly, his boots crunching the duff. Tyler grabbed Ilara's arm, pulling her back, but a loose stone skittered down the slope, betraying them. Jake burst through the branches, crowbar raised. "You! The girl from the sanctuary! What the hell are you doing spying on me?" Ilara stood her ground, chin lifted, though fear coiled in her gut. "We saw the tools, Jake. The cuts on the fences. They match. Why are you doing this? The lynx, the deer? It's sabotage, isn't it? For the development?" Jake's face twisted, the crowbar lowering slightly, but his knuckles whitened. He was closer now, close enough for Ilara to see the stubble shadowing his jaw, the faint scar above his eye from some old trail mishap. "You don't know shit, kid. My family's been here generations. Watch that land get swallowed by do-gooders like Maria, turning it into a zoo while folks like me scrape by. The highway expansion, it'll bring jobs, roads that don't flood every spring. Sanctuaries in the way, crying wolf over a few animals." Tyler stepped forward, notebook out like a shield. "So you cut the fences to make them look incompetent? Force them out? That's criminal, man. Poaching vibes, but worse, endangering lives." Jake laughed bitterly, a hollow sound that echoed off the rocks. "Not poaching, just leveling the field. Uncle's on the board. He needs reasons to deny their expansion grants. One escaped lynx, a breached deer pen. Suddenly, they're a liability." He glanced at the duffel, regret flickering in his eyes. Didn't mean for the cub to get hurt. Collar was supposed to hold. Ilara's anger surged, hot and unyielding. "Lyrael almost died on that highway. Because of your leveling? She's just a baby, Jake. This isn't about jobs. It's revenge for your family's bad deals." The words hit like a slap. Jake's shoulders sagged, the crowbar dropping to his side. "Maybe. Lost the farm to taxes. Watched condos sprout where we used to hunt. Sanctuary got the prime acres for pennies. Felt like theft." He rubbed his neck, the fight draining out. "Look, take the bag if you want. Tell Hargrove, I'm done. Can't keep this up." But as he turned to gather his things, a distant siren wailed, climbing the ridge. Hargrove, or Sanctuary Security. Tyler's phone buzzed. A text from Maria. "Cops en route. Another breach reported. Your trail?" Panic flashed across Jake's face. He bolted for the truck, engine roaring as he peeled out, kicking up dust that stung their eyes. Ilara and Tyler coughed, racing back to the main trail as the cruiser crested the hill. Hargrove pulled up, lights flashing. Maria in the passenger seat. "You two okay?" Hargrove bellowed, stepping out. His mustache twitched with concern. "Got a call about suspicious activity up here. Harlan's truck?" Ilara nodded, breathless, handing over the photo she'd managed to take mid-confrontation. The duffel, the tools. "He's the one. Confessed, sort of. It's all tied to the development push." Maria's relief was palpable, though shadowed by weariness. "Thank God. The director's filing for an injunction. Stops the expansion cold if we prove negligence." She pulled Ilara into a quick hug, the scent of her chamomile lotion grounding. "You saved more than Lyriel today." As they piled into the cruiser for the ride down, the mountains unfolded below, vast and unforgiving. Ilara leaned against the window, the adrenaline fading into a bone-deep ache. Tyler squeezed her hand, a silent thanks. The truth had cracked open, but scars lingered. Jake's bitterness, a symptom of deeper rifts in the land they all called home. Lyriel waited below, safe for now, but Ilara wondered if one girl's stand could mend what greed had torn. The sun climbed higher, warming the chill, but the shadows of doubt stretched long into the afternoon. The cruiser bumped down the ridge trail, gravel pinging off the undercarriage like scattered accusations. Ilara sat in the back with Tyler, the vinyl seat sticky against her jeans, the air thick with the scent of pine resin and Hargrove's aftershave. Maria twisted in the front passenger seat, her fingers drumming the armrest, eyes fixed on the receding dust cloud from Jake's truck. The mountains rolled by in a blur of gold and green, the sanctuary coming into view like a beleaguered fortress, its fences now a patchwork of caution tape fluttering in the breeze. Hargrove gripped the wheel tighter, his radio crackling with updates from dispatch. "Harlan's got priors, misdemeanors, nothing major. Trespassing on county land last year. If he's behind this, we'll nail him." His voice was steady, but Ilara caught the undercurrent of frustration. Small-town policing stretched thin, especially when grudges ran as deep as Colorado's fault lines. He'd grown up in Lakewood patrolling these same roads since the 90s, watching family farms fold under development waves that promised progress but delivered strip malls and traffic snarls. Tyler leaned forward, his notebook open on his knee, scribbling details from the confrontation. He admitted it, basically, said it was to discredit the sanctuary for the highway project. "Tools in the bag match the cuts. Ilara's photo proves it." His words tumbled out, fueled by the rush of vindication, but Ilara felt a hollow ache settle in her chest. Jake's confession hadn't been triumphant. It was raw, laced with the bitterness of a man squeezed out by forces bigger than himself. She thought of her own family's close calls, her dad's layoff from the mill when automation hit, the scramble to make ends meet. Was Jake so different? Just angrier, more broken. They pulled into the sanctuary lot, where the director, a wiry man named Dr. Elias Grant in his 60s, waited with arms crossed. His face was weathered like old leather from decades in the field, silver hair cropped short under a ball cap embroidered with the facility's logo. He'd founded the place in the 80s, back when Lynx reintroduction was a pipe dream, fighting bureaucrats and budgets to carve out this haven. "Report," he said simply, as the group piled out. Maria recounted the ridge encounter, her voice gaining strength with each detail. The duffel, the tools, Jake's half-hearted defense. Dr. Grant's jaw set like granite. "I've suspected pressure from the county board for months. Harlan's uncle, Councilman Reed, pushing that expansion like it's the second coming. More lanes mean easier access for commuters from Denver, but it guts our north pastures." He paced the gravel, kicking a loose stone. "If Jake's cutting fences to make us look negligent, it's to kill our funding appeals. Lynx program alone pulls in grants worth half our budget." Ilara shifted her weight, the chill wind tugging at her flannel. "What about Lyriel? Is she okay?" The question slipped out, an anchor in the storm of adult machinations. Dr. Grant's expression softened, just a fraction. She's resting. Vet checked her again this morning. No internal issues from the run. But stress like this, these animals feel it deeper than we know. He glanced toward the quarantine building, where the low hum of fans carried on the air. Come see for yourself. Might ground us all. Inside, the room was a cocoon of warmth, the air scented with eucalyptus from a diffuser meant to soothe. Lyriel lay curled on her blanket, her bandaged paw tucked beneath her chin, tufted ears flicking at their approach. Through the mesh, she lifted her head, golden eyes narrowing, then widening in recognition. Ilara knelt, pressing her palm to the barrier. The cub rose slowly, limping forward to nuzzle it, her rough tongue flicking out in a tentative lick. A purr rumbled low, vibrating the air like a distant engine. See? She remembers you, Maria said, her voice thick. She'd lost animals before, to cars, to disease, but this felt personal. An assault on the fragile trust they built. Ilara's eyes stung. In that moment, the cub embodied everything at stake, the wild slipping through cracks, not just in fences, but in the human resolve to protect it. Tyler hung back, snapping discreet photos for his notes. We could go public. My dad's old contacts at the post. Expose the sabotage, tie it to the councilman. Force a hearing. Doctor, Grant nodded thoughtfully. Smart, but we need hard evidence. Hargrove's chasing Jake now. Last ping on his truck headed toward Evergreen. If he bolts, we're back to square one. He turned to Ilara, appraising her with a gaze that saw beyond her youth. You started this, kid. That walk home turned into something bigger. Stick around. We might need witnesses for the board meeting tomorrow. The offer lit a spark in Ilara, chasing away the doubt. Lunch was hasty. Sandwiches from the office fridge, eaten at a folding table amid maps of the property marked with breach points. Tyler sketched a timeline, connecting dots. The storm as cover for initial cuts. Lyriel's escape timed for maximum chaos. The deer pen as a follow-up to escalate fear. Maria shared more about the sanctuary's struggles. Federal cuts to endangered species funding. Local hunters grumbling over urban wildlife encroaching on their turf. We're not against progress, she said, wiping mustard from her lip. Just want it smart. That highway could include wildlife corridors, underpasses for migration, but greed blinds them. Afternoon brought action. Hargrove called with an update. Jake's truck found abandoned at a trailhead near Meyer Ranch Park, a popular spot for hikers with its rolling meadows and cottonwood groves. He's on foot, likely heading for a family cabin up there. We're coordinating with rangers. Search parties forming. The officer's tone carried urgency. The park's trails twisted like veins through the foothills. Easy to vanish into if you knew the terrain. Ilara volunteered without hesitation. I know those paths. My dad and I hiked them last summer. There's a shortcut to the old Harlan place. Tyler backed her, his skepticism yielding to loyalty. Dr. Grant hesitated, then relented. With Hargrove, no heroics. The search party assembled at the park entrance by mid-afternoon, a mix of uniforms and volunteers in blaze-orange vests. The air hummed with radio chatter, the crunch of boots on leaf-strewn dirt. Ilara and Tyler stuck close to Maria, who carried a first aid kit, her practical bun coming loose in the wind. The trail climbed steadily, past boulders etched with lichen and stands of gamble oak shedding crimson leaves. Tension built with each step. Birdsong seemed muted, as if the forest held its breath. Halfway up, a shout echoed from the east flank, rangers spotting fresh tracks veering off trail. The group fanned out, Ilara's heart pounding as she pushed through underbrush, thorns snagging her sleeves. Ahead, through a screen of willows, Jake emerged onto a clearing, hands raised, face streaked with sweat and dirt. Hargrove's team closed in, weapons holstered but ready. It's over, Harlan, Hargrove called, voice booming. We got the tools, your print's on the wire. Councilman's denying involvement, but you're looking at felony endangerment. Those animals could have died. Jake sank to his knees, the fight gone, his hoodie torn at the elbow. Just wanted my life back. Farm's gone. Job's gone. Sanctuary sits on what should have been mine. His words cracked, revealing the man beneath the grudge, a son of the soil, displaced by the very expansion he now aided. Ilara watched from the tree line, pity warring with anger. He wasn't a monster, just a casualty, but his actions had rippled outward, endangering Lyriel and all she represented. As cuffs clicked into place, the sun began its descent, casting long shadows over the meadow. Maria placed a hand on Ilara's shoulder, a silent acknowledgement. The rescue had led here, not just to a captured saboteur, but to a reckoning for the land's fragile balance. Yet questions lingered. Would the exposure halt the highway, save the sanctuary? Ilara glanced back toward Golden, the city lights twinkling like distant stars. The wild called, and she'd answered, but the story's end was still unfolding in the gathering dusk. The evening sky over Meyer Ranch Park deepened to a bruised purple, the kind of twilight that swallowed sounds and softened edges, leaving only the rustle of wind through the willows and the distant hum of traffic from Highway 40 below. Ilara stood at the clearing's edge, her breath coming in shallow bursts as Hargrove's team led Jake Harlan down the trail in cuffs, his shoulders slumped under the weight of defeat. The air carried the sharp tang of crushed ferns and cooling earth, mingling with the faint, acrid scent of fear sweat from the standoff. Tyler hovered beside her, his notebook clutched like a talisman, his face pale but resolute in the fading light. Maria broke the silence first, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "It's done. He can't hurt us anymore." She adjusted her vest, the blaze orange clashing with the encroaching shadows, and glanced at Ilara with a mix of gratitude and maternal concern. Dr. Grant nodded from afar, already on his radio coordinating with the sanctuary staff to double-check enclosures under the rising moon. The search party's radios crackled with confirmations, no more breaches, animals secure, but the victory felt fragile, like a bandage over a wound still seeping. The ride back to the sanctuary was quiet, the cruiser's interior lit by the glow of dashboard lights and the occasional sweep of passing headlights. Ilara leaned her head against the window, the cool glass grounding her as the foothills blurred past. Jake's words echoed in her mind. The farm lost, the grudge nursed like a slow poison. It humanized him, made the sabotage less a villain's plot and more a desperate grasp at control in a world that had moved on without him. Tyler broke the hush, his voice low. "You think they'll charge the uncle too? Councilman Reed, if he's pulling strings." Hargrove grunted from the driver's seat, eyes on the road. "Evidence first. Harlan's talking and holding, might flip for a deal. We've got your photos. The tools, solid chain. But politics, that's a snake pit. Sanctuary's got leverage now. Board meeting tomorrow could shift the tide on that highway." His mustache twitched with a wry smile in the rear view. "You kids stirred the pot good. Reminds me of my first bust, chasing poachers up in the Never Summer Range. Thought I was invincible then." By the time they reached the facility, stars pricked the velvet sky, and the parking lot floodlights cast stark pools of yellow. Lyriel's enclosure waited in the quarantine building, a beacon amid the uncertainty. Ilara slipped inside alone, the door's soft click sealing out the night's chill. The room hummed with the gentle whir of the humidifier, the air warm and laced with the musky comfort of hay and venison scraps. The cub stirred at her approach, her golden eyes reflecting the low lamp like twin moons. No longer frantic, Lyriel rose on steady paws, the bandage a white flag against her tawny fur, and pressed against the mesh with a soft chuff. Ilara knelt, tears blurring her vision as she traced the barrier with her fingers. "We got him, girl. You're safe." The lynx tilted her head, ears tufting forward in that almost knowing way, and batted gently at her hand. In that quiet exchange, the weight of the past days lifted slightly, the highway's roar, the hidden cuts, the shadows of greed, all fading against this small, wild trust. Lyriel had been the spark, her lost cries pulling Ilara from her ordinary path into this fray, but now she symbolized something larger, resilience in the face of encroachment, a reminder that the wild endured if fought for. Outside, the group debriefed under the portico, steam rising from styrofoam cups of hot chocolate Maria had brewed. Dr. Grant outlined next steps, bolstering fences with federal grant money now in play, partnering with environmental groups to redesign the highway with underpasses and barriers, Jake's arrest buys us time, he said, his voice gravelly from years of advocacy speeches. Councilman Reed's scrambling, denies everything, but the Post is running Tyler's tip tomorrow. Public pressure could kill the worst of it. Tyler grinned faintly, pocketing his phone after texting his dad the scoop. Front page, maybe. Local teens unmask sabotage plot. Has a ring. But his eyes held a shadow. Exposing Jake meant unraveling a neighbor, a man whose bitterness mirrored the fractures in their own community. Ilara's mom arrived then, her Subaru crunching gravel as she pulled up, worry lines etching her face under the headlights. Heard from Maria. You okay? She enveloped Ilara in a hug, the familiar scent of hospital soap and vanilla lotion a balm. Yeah, Mom, just tired. Ilara leaned into her, the adrenaline crash hitting like a wave. Lisa drove her home through the winding roads of Golden, past glowing ranch houses and the dark silhouette of the Rockies. They talked little, the radio filling the silence with a soft country tune about open skies and second chances. At home, the kitchen light spilled warm onto the porch, her dad waiting with a plate of reheated lasagna, his way of saying he'd followed the saga via texts from the station. The next week unfolded in a rhythm of normalcy laced with aftermath. Ilara started her internship officially, mornings spent mending enclosures and afternoons shadowing Maria on rounds. Lyriel thrived, her limp fading as she grew bolder, eventually joining a playgroup with other orphaned kits under watchful eyes. The sanctuary buzzed with renewed energy. Donations poured in after the article hit, locals rallying against the unchecked expansion. Councilman Reed resigned amid investigations, his ties to developers scrutinized in hearings that made statewide news. Jake's trial loomed in the spring, but whispers from Hargrove suggested a plea. Community service on conservation projects. A chance to mend what he'd torn. Ilara didn't hate him anymore. Pity had softened to understanding, the kind born from seeing how loss could twist good intentions. She hiked the ridge trails on weekends with Tyler, mapping safe corridors for wildlife. Their friendship forged stronger in the fire of discovery. School resumed its grind, but Ilara carried the cub's spirit, a quiet ferocity that pushed her toward environmental science scholarships, dreams of protecting the fragile wilds that defined her home. One crisp November afternoon, as snow dusted the peaks, Ilara visited Lyriel one last time before the cub's release prep. The Lynx bounded to the mesh, playful now, her spots blending with the sunlit grass beyond the window. In that moment, the highway's distant hum felt less like a threat and more a challenge met. Colorado's heart beat on, wild and unyielding, thanks to one girl's step off the path and into the fray. The balance held for now, a testament to persistence against the tide of change. Leave a comment sharing what you thought about this story.